move to a new chapter, chapter 6, which is the introduction to inference. So what does that mean? So you should still remember, like, if you are given the whole population, and usually it's expensive and impractical to do the survey for the whole population to get some results, right? So instead, we want to find some sample here, to choose some sample. Small but not too small, but still like the sample size, the bigger the better, but not as big as the whole population. So we want to do some survey and draw some data from this sample, right? So we can collect data from the sample, and then this sample should be a good representative of the whole population. And then we got some result. And then we want to make this result to infer what happens with the whole population. Okay, so this chapter we are going to learn, like, how do we do that, and is there a numerical way, or we can quantify the things that we are doing, so we can make like a better, or at least we can tell whether the inference is good approximation for the whole population or not. So the terminology here is the statistical inference. It provides method for drawing conclusion about a population from a sample sample data. Okay. And usually the statistical inference involves two prominent techniques. The first one is called confidence interval. So this one tells you, like, how confident we are that the true value is located between our confidence interval. Okay, so for example, if our confidence interval for some mean value, for example, is between 1 and 1.2. Let's give it a name. Let's say usually 95% of confidence interval is 1 to 1.2. This tells you that we are 95% confident that the true mean will be located between 1 and 1.2. Okay. And this is just some preview. If you do not understand, do not worry. We will proceed and you will see some example later. And the second thing for the statistical inference is called hypothesis test. So we will say, okay, make some test to see whether this is true or not. For example, if you want to know a new drug, is this new drug works better than the old one or not? So we will do a hypothesis test, whether it is good or not. And yeah, this is maybe in next class we will talk about this. For today's class, we will focus on confidence interval. So, but in these two cases, the key point here is we always ask, what will happen if we use the method many times? So, or we draw samples from the whole population and again, and what kind of conclusion can we make, or how confident are we that the data or the inference that we draw is correct? So Formal statistical inference is based on sampling distribution. So we must understand the language of the probability and the logic of the reasoning. When you see statistical inference, you should act as if your data comes from a random sample or randomized experience. Okay, so which means we should avoid bias. So sample conditions for inference about a mean. When we have a simple random sample from the population of interest, there is no non-response or other practical difficulty. Okay, so when we do that, our first assumption samples are always responsive. And the second is the variable we measure has an exact normal distribution with the mean mu and the standard deviation sigma in the population. Okay. And another assumption is mu usually is unknown, but we do know the population's standard deviation. This is the condition